Far from the Pribilof Islands, 1,000 miles away in the most distant reaches of the Aleutian Islands near the Russian mainland, another community shares similar relationships with the marine environment at their door. On Bering Island, the largest of the Commander Islands, a traditional way of life draws from the same cultural threads that give the Pribilof Islands of St. Paul and St. George a distinct identity. Though the international dateline and an international boundary lie between these two far-flung communities, the people on the Pribilof Islands and the Commander Islands share a common Unungan ancestry. The Pribilof Islands Seabird Youth Network has been helping re-establish connections and build new relationships between the youth and wildlife biologists from both island groups. And for the last several years, students on Bering Island have been sharing visual postcards with their peers on the Pribilof Islands, documenting an impressive 75-mile-long trekking adventure across Bering Island, accompanied by immersive lessons in history and wildlife. These stories inspired the 2023 hiking camp on St. George Island. The St. George Backpacking Adventure Camp began with a hike up to the lofty heights of High Bluffs. Here the cliffs tower more than 1,000 feet above the breakers below. Remnants of an eroded volcano, the cliffs are home to most of the world's population of red-legged kittiwake. The climb was long, and we passed through lots of fog and rocky terrain. When we reached the top, High Bluffs was an island in the clouds, with clear skies and striking views. None of the 7 kids had ever been up to High Bluffs on St. George. On 2 occasions, we met with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service biologists along the cliffs of High Bluffs. They told us about their productivity plots and population counts and how these are used to study the marine ecosystem. We found kittiwake eggs and chicks with the help of the biologists. Before setting out on this hike, we learned about the ecological camp on Bering Island. We embraced the spirit of the Commander Islands camp by making lots of natural history discoveries along our route, identifying native plants and observing how nimbly Arctic foxes navigated the steep slopes with ease. At the far end of the hiking loop, the Fox Castle area featured amazing views of nesting seabirds. 2 impressive steep draws funneled the bird activity in our direction. The next day we broke camp and spent the evening back in town to recover from our excursions. We had an opportunity to tour the Wash House, a historical sealing plant. We learned how fresh northern fur seal pelts were unloaded from trucks directly into massive ocean water tubs to soak. Then the blubber was painstakingly removed and the pelts were heavily salted and prepared for transport and tanning. This may be the only sealing plant still in existence, and it remains an important part of the Pribilof's cultural heritage. Our second campout was at Garden Cove. The steep hike started in town, peaking at the top of the island's central ridge, then slowly descended the other side of the island. Garden Cove is an oasis of freshwater springs, wildflowers, and a hidden black sand beach. There is plenty to do at the beach. Several kids were transformed into mermaids through the magical process of black sand burial. The last morning at Garden Cove and hike back were very wet and rainy. The foggy conditions had us using our GPS to find the most direct route home. We were back in time to visit the Alaska Maritime Wildlife Refuge staff bunkhouse and challenge the staff to play the Seabird Fun Game, which amounts to a seabird knowledge test. We are pleased to report that the kids emerged victorious, having pretty much memorized the whole game. The biologists were good sports and took their defeat gracefully. The St. Paul kids spent their final day on St. George painting the Across the Bering Sea mural. The design was developed through a collaborative effort with our friends on the Commander Islands. They provided themes and content ideas while we sketched out their ideas into visual form. After a very busy week, we departed for St. Paul by boat and by plane. The St. George Backpacking Adventure Camp made many memories and formed a tighter bond between the islands. It also gave us a glimpse of what the ecology camp on Bering Island might be like.